There is a well known saying that the whole of Western philosophy is footnotes to Plato. This is because his writings have set an agenda which philosophy as a whole, and not only moral philosophy, can be said roughly to have followed ever since. In the Allegory of Cave, Plato described symbolically the predicament in which mankind finds itself and proposes a way of salvation. The allegory presents, in brief form, most of Plato's major philosophical assumptions. His belief that the world revealed by our senses is not the real world but only a poor copy of it, and that the real world can only be apprehended intellectually. His idea that knowledge cannot be transferred from teacher to student, but rather that education consists in directing students' minds toward what is real and important and allowing them to apprehend it for themselves. His faith that the universe ultimately is good, his conviction that enlightened individuals have an obligation to the rest of society, and that a good society must be one in which the truly wise are the rulers. The most famous passage in all Plato's writings occurs in the Republic and is known as the myth of the cave. In it, Plato puts into symbolic form his view of the human condition and especially of human knowledge in relation to reality as a whole. Imagine, he says, a big cave connected to the outside world by a passage long enough to prevent any daylight from penetrating into the cave itself. Facing the far wall with their backs to the entrance is a row of prisoners. Not only are their limbs chained, they are also fastened by the neck so that they cannot move their heads and therefore cannot see one another. Indeed, cannot see any part of themselves. All they can see is the wall in front of them, and they have been in this situation all their lives and know nothing else. In the cave behind them is a bright fire. Unknown to them, there is a rampart as high as a man between the fire and them. And on the other side of this rampart are people perpetually passing to and fro, carrying things on their heads. The shadows of these objects are cast onto the wall in front of the prisoners by the light of the fire, and the voices of the people carrying them are echoed back from this wall to the prisoners' ears. Now, says Plato, the only entities that the prisoners ever perceive or experience in the whole of their existence are those shadows and those echoes. In these circumstances, it would be natural for them to assume that shadows and echoes constitute all the reality there is, and it would be to this reality and to their experiences of it that all their talk would refer. If one of the prisoners could shake off his chains, so cramped would he be by a lifetime of entrapment in the half dark, that merely to turn around would be painful and awkward for him, and the fire would dazzle his eyes. He would find himself confused and uncomprehending, and would want to turn back again to face the wall of shadows, the reality he understood. If he were dragged up out of the cave altogether into the world of blazing sunlight, he would be blinded and bewildered. And it would be a long time before he was able to see or understand anything. But then, once he was used to being in the upper world, if he were to return to the cave, he would be temporarily blinded again, this time by the darkness. And everything he said to the prisoners about his experiences would be unintelligible to those people whose language had reference only to shadows and echoes. The way to begin understanding this allegory is to see us human beings as imprisoned in our own bodies, with only other such prisoners for company, and all of us unable to discern the real selves of one another or even our own real selves. Our direct experience is not of reality, but what is in our minds. It may be thousands of years old, but there is still much to learn from this text.